Hello and welcome to my workshop. So this video is just a really brief kind of just build it guide on how I made the little kiosk the other day. I say it's a just build it guide. I call it that because I didn't have a fixed plan when I started making it. I just kind of built it as I went along. So the thing to mention about this is the main component is like a little sweet container from like the claw machines that you find in arcades. So I spotted this when I was on holiday a couple of months ago and I thought, oh, that'll make a pretty decent, interesting piece of scatter terrain. Looked good in the market, like the corner of a board. The whole thing, all the changes, probably took about 45 minutes, and then painting time, probably like an hour on top, including drying time. So not a massive investment of time, just lots of dry brushes. So hopefully you find this guide useful, and I'll see you on the other side. So here's a little cup in all its unpainted glory, it's a really fun little item. The lid pops off and the straw comes out too, just for a total of 3 parts, nothing complex to it at all. So first things first, I decided to mark out the window, just roughly highlight an arch. It's probably easier to do a square shape, but arch is what I went with, and I just really carefully tried to cut it out with a sharp knife. And then just to smooth off the bottom, I just got a file and just tried to make that as level as possible, although we are going to cover it up later. So having got the main big change made to the cup, I decided just to test fit to see if a guy would fit inside. So this is my cadaver merchant, and he's currently sat on a 25mm base, and he sits in, pretty perfectly. So the first bit of detail I decided to add was the roller shutter that fits just on the inside. This is made from just regular cardstock, cereal packet would do as well, and this is my little corrugator. I was actually trying to find some plastic that I had. I think it's from like a sushi box. It had a nice, corrugated looking effect to it, but I couldn't find that, so I used this instead. And as you notice, if you're looking at it, it's gone a bit off to one side, and that's because I was holding it rather than on the front to one side, so there's more pressure, so it went off. However, we managed to get just enough to be able to do the bit that I wanted to do. So there are no measurements in this one, as I just made everything up as I went along, as I said before. I've just guessed everything that I've cut and tried to neatly cut out on this, and I think it came out pretty well. So there you can see I'm just lining up the outside just to get a visual check of roughly how much I need to leave, just to be able to get a good purchase when it is glued on the inside. The good thing about card over the plastic that I was looking for is it's infinitely more flexible, so I was able just to push fit this to the shape of the inside, so you get a nice flush fit just like that. And then for this one, I broke out my trusty Gorilla Glue. Normal super glue would do it, but this is just the one I had to hand. So I wasn't too concerned about getting glue in visible places, in that I think that if you cover it over with a good coat of paint, it just looks like bubbling rust, and will add to the weathering. So now I've got that nice and snug in place, it started to feel like it was coming together. So the first bit of detail I decided to add was a door, just to make it a bit more believable that it's like a functioning, shop. It's just a piece of card, the same as we used to make the shutter, just cut to roughly the same size as the cadaver merchant, including its base, and just simply going to glue it to the outside, helping it fold and curve around the outside of the cup. Again, super glue makes pretty quick work of this, and because it's card, it actually soaks in and provides a really strong bond. So with that nice and firmly glued down, we can turn our attention to the next bit of detail, which is just like a reinforced bar that goes under the window, because the service hatch is going to have the counter that sits on top, and it just gives it that bit more of a stronger look. Again for this, just using a piece of card, and this is a slight offcut from the door that I made, just lining up by eye how big that I need to cut. The beauty about this counter hatch as well, it'll also cover up the slight slip that I had when I was cutting the window. trying to not get it too thick or too thin, just somewhere in the middle, just to give that, like it's got an extra piece of something, like a support underneath, just to give that impression of strength. Luckily I got it first go and didn't have to try again, and I just neatly cut this off with a sharp knife and my steel rule. So just a little dab of super glue under the service hatch to fix that reinforcement in place. Again, not too worried about little bits being visible, as it'll get covered up with paint later on. And now this is fixed in place, we can turn our attention to the final bit before we look at the rivets. So the small countertop is made from a piece of L-shaped styrene. I believe it's 3mm by 3mm, and I'm just lining it up on the inside there and getting a rough measurement of where I need to cut. I'm going to mark it out with a pen in a minute just to give me a fixed reference, but that is the last cut I'm going to make in this project. If you're doing any build project, I'd recommend having a sharp pen and pencil nearby. This permanent marker was the only one I could find at the minute. Everything else seems to have dried out, which is bad luck for me, so I'm going to have to get some more. But it did the job for now, but sharper is genuinely more accurate, especially if you're trying to do precise cuts and measurements. So you see me now just remeasure that to remember what side I'm supposed to cut, but it wouldn't have mattered at all because it's one cut. I could have easily figured out which one was the right length, because only one would fit snugly. Now I've got a nice dry fit in place, we can apply a little bit of glue and turn our attention to the rivets. So these are the rivets I was experimenting with using. They're the little gems from diamond paintings. My partner, she was throwing out one of the old paints she's got, and there was plenty left over. They're not smooth, they do have like a rough texture to them. It's not like a uniform kind of diamond shape, if you think kind of the name, but something a little bit irregular looking. And for this scale, I think they're okay. Obviously, you can get smaller ones, and there are many methods of doing rivets, but this is what I opted for just to give it a go. And with that, here's my attempt at rivets. So I've just done a few here and there. I normally start in like a north, south, east, west pattern, just to be able to map out and then fill in the areas in between equally spaced. Gone around the door with a few more to make it a bit more reinforced looking and like it is an actual hatch. The last step, I decided to glue a 32mm base on the bottom, just to give the actual kiosk like a platform. It sounds daft, but it kind of makes it more like a fixed item then, rather than something that's just been kind of put down. It makes it feel more like a permanent structure to me, so I opted to do that, and with that, that is a final and last step. Painting wise is really simple. It's just a black rattle can undercoat, and everything else is dry brushed over the top. The green is moot green, with 3 layers, a horizontal, a vertical, and then the last horizontal layer. The top red is just Mephiston red, again dry brushed over that. The white is Celestra grey with an Agrax wash and then Corax white over the top of that. And the weathering is Rhinox hide with an Ironbreaker stippling over the top of that as well. All shadings done with Agrax Earthshade, just put in the recesses and smudged down in places as well, just to give it a bit of overbleed. And there you have it, that is the method behind the madness of the little kiosk. Nothing too complex there at all, just a really quick, simple build. Now, I did say I'd see you the other side, and in all truthfulness, I completely forgot to record the outro. So, here's me saying thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful, and if you've not subscribed, please consider giving the channel a subscribe. I'd love to get to 2,000 before the end of the year. And also I'm working on the audio of like the talky face-to-face bits, so I need to get like a lapel mic, so it's all work in progress, so apologies for that, but hopefully everything works out fine. So I shall be back shortly with another build, all being well, so I will see you then.